Alrighty. How you feeling, Nick?
Feeling very relaxed.
Okay. Should we start the
Very
podcast?
comfy. Yes.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Where am I looking? Hello, and welcome to the Video Lineup Podcast. That's us, Thomas.
Yes. And Nick.
And we are this week reviewing
The Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz. I didn't mean to sort of tennis ball.
Bit of back and forth.
Back and forth.
That's great.
We're getting our groove.
You encouraged me to talk a bit more, so you've
Okay.
got to throw it to me.
That's good. Where did you put the box that the podcast thing came in? Because I did some hard work this week and I printed out this list.
I think I put it back.
You put the list back. It was meant to be like right here so I could seem organised, but so that I could primarily know what number we're up to. So last week was Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah. I don't know what's next week. So
Okay, it's in deep in the recesses of my mind. But this week it's The Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
And yeah, we're going to get stuck into it. It was pretty.
Were you excited about
I was.
watching it?
I was.
When was the last time you watched it?
Only a couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not like closeted about this, but I'm definitely a big Wizard of Oz fan.
Yeah.
It has sentimentality to it because watching it with my grandparents or at their house and then having it on VHS, taped from like some broadcast, with the ads, the old Channel 7 ads, cutting in and missing sections.
Yeah.
There was always a section where the lion, when he runs back and he jumps between the glass, he's terrified. And then
So
I think
weird.
that whole set of ads after that, I feel like it was only halfway through when the movie came back on that we forgot to, we pressed unpause. And so it's sort of all of a sudden they were in the forest or something. It was something like that. I remember there was a solid few minutes gone. So when we got it on DVD, it was
unedited version.
version.
Yeah.
The DIY recorded version.
Extended version.
Oh yeah, 5 extra minutes that were in there from the beginning that you never saw. So yeah, Wizard of Oz. It was 1939 classic. Judy Garland in the starring role.
I think I've heard of her.
I'm going to just try and reel off some names.
Yeah.
Not that they'll mean anything because I don't know any people from anything else really.
No, I didn't recognise anyone.
This is Margaret Hamilton. She's the wizard. She's the witch.
Which?
The Wicked Witch of the West.
Probably the weakest actor.
Very mean. I like her. I think she's great. She was terrified. Okay, first viewing of this, how old do you think you were?
I don't know. We didn't have a TV when I was younger, so I remember the only way we watched movies was my dad owned a bookshop which had videos there. So I think he would have had The Wizard of Oz, so I would have been maybe 7 or 8.
Okay, 7 or 8. Oh, so that's pretty young. Your dad owned a bookshop?
Yeah.
In New Zealand?
In New Zealand.
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. For those viewing at home, we're in Australia right now, which is a different country to New Zealand.
Yes.
Even though we probably sound very similar to other people. But we've got a big overseas audience. Shout out to our big overseas audience. I was probably around, I was a bit younger maybe, but around this. Actually, I definitely was younger. I reckon I saw it, around 4. I'll ask my parents, but it was probably around that.
I think it's one of those films that if you saw it when you were younger, you definitely have a romantic memory of it.
Yes, there's history around why a lot of people have seen it when they were younger that we could get into at some point. There's reasons why it was shown annually.
Okay.
There's things that I've gleaned from some YouTube people that are more informed than us.
Lovely.
But it was a good movie. I liked it straight up. It's hard to. Previously we did. We're working our way through the AFI Top 100 films of all time. So this movie is, I'm gonna say, episode 6.
Yeah.
We really should write this down before we start.
I know. Every week.
Okay, hold the fort, Nick. Tell our fantastic audience something amazing. I'm going to go get that thing that I laminated to look professional.
Just cut it.
Okay, and we're back. All right, so let's be honest. We're a little bit chaotic today. Episode 1 was Citizen Kane, Casablanca 2, Godfather 3, Gone with the Wind 4, Lawrence of Arabia 5, boom, Wizard of Oz 6.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Okay, so
Firstly,
can I ask you a question? I'm going to talk over top of you because I've got a question for you.
That's fine. Give it to me.
What do you think it was worthy of? Position number 6 after Lawrence of Arabia.
I do think so. Just to give some context, like I was really looking forward to watching it again, but then I think after watching Lawrence of Arabia, it's a very different feel, and like it is more of a kid friendly film. So I got annoyed at some of the acting and I guess some of the comedy, which was, I guess, slapstick, over the top sort of humour. But I definitely see the beauty of the scenes that they've constructed in a studio and the story that's being told. So yeah,
Yeah. I don't think every shot is inside of a studio. So
Yeah.
everything you see is constructed. There's matte paintings in this movie that are beautiful.
it was amazing the transition from real to a
Yeah.
flat matte painting.
As a kid, you watch that and you do really sort of go, whoa, this place is
it's
massive.
magical. Yeah,
It is magical.
You don't pick up on that sort of stuff. I
As
think
an adult.
no, as a kid.
As a kid, no, you sort of let it wash over you.
Yeah,
And for all the reasons you probably had some qualms.
Qualms.
Yeah, with it. I love it.
Yeah,
I have no qualms.
Yeah.
Whatever. This is a perfect movie.
perfect.
Yeah, well, for what it sets out to
Yeah,
be, it feels like
definitely.
we got to hold every movie to the same measuring stick. Did it achieve all of the exact same things? But this movie, in my research, was sort of made by MGM in a response to Snow White, which was a movie that captivated audiences and had wonder and magic, and a central, female lead and all this, grabbing on a story that was famous and getting that family audience or whatever they were trying to capture at that time. And so they set out to make something that utilized this new technology, Technicolor,
Yeah,
and they, went all in on it.
which that was great. Like the transition from real life to the dream world.
Yes, so when Dorothy's house lands from Kansas and it lands in Oz on the Wicked Witch of the East,
Yep.
you have this one shot, which is a very famous shot where you're leading in behind Dorothy and she opens the door and then in she walks in. She's in a blue dress.
How would they do that?
The way they did it was that the entire set was painted in sepia tones. So the shot never has sepia in it. As soon as you see her and when she's opening that door, everything prior to that is in color. But they had a version of the dress and makeup and everything, and that was a body double of Dorothy. And she opens the door, and all of that is all painted sepia.
It's amazing.
So to your eye, if you were watching it, it would be sepia. And then sepia is the thing that comes to mind, but I think that's what it's called. And then real Dorothy, Judy Garland, enters the shot and you see the Munchkin land. And it's not just some, bit of colour here and there. It's every colour under the rainbow.
Yeah.
And it's awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
And for people who
would have had a lot of fun building that set.
They would have, yeah. So... so that's what the movie was partly made in response to, and what gap in the market they sought to fill, and
this was a story that was popular.
Yeah, well,
this is based on a book.
Yeah, it's based on a book. I don't know much about the book series, but I know there was a series of books.
Okay.
By L. Frank Baum. I've got a couple of abridged versions that you read to the kids, pictures. They've had all sorts of weird stuff in it, like tiger bear things that, they ended up cutting out. They're not putting in this movie, but there's all these things that they go through that aren't in the movie. But I liked it. I loved it. I think it was interesting in the use of songs in music, which I'm guessing we'll see later on in this list, where movies weren't usually incorporating thematic songs for the characters to sing that were relevant to what they were going through at that time. If I only had a heart, that they're talking about their needs.
Yeah.
Typically songs just were what they were singing, and that would be in the context of like a movie that was about show business itself.
Yeah, okay.
So this movie is where they're actually on a journey and boom, they were singing a song on the road and then they're singing another song. And then there was new things they were doing with this movie aside from the colour. It knocks it all out of the park. I think every single shot is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's slapstick. It's funny. It's all over the place. But again, this is pre-Brando acting. This is studio system. You're going to get a lot of the same sort of style of dialogue and things that you and I probably are going to find a bit abrasive. But
and I think I was probably just tired. I was watching it on Sunday.
You were just being
night.
grumpy.
Grumpy 37.
You're allowed to. Yeah.
But I was just wondering with the colour, do because when they're filming in black and white, there's no need for all that, the colour. So do you think they went over the top, or they go to extra effort to just make it look?
Probably.
Yeah.
I guess it's like a new technology. You know, would they have gone over the top with the... well, that's probably why they chose the story. I'm going to guess. That's why they chose to do this story. But, got to remember, like 1939, same year, Gone with the Wind, also in colour. So it's not like other movies hadn't done colour or were doing colour. It's just, like we've got the poster behind us, and I think it says in there, MGM... The Wizard of Oz, it's Metro Goldwyn Mayer's Technicolor Triumph. So that's like what we did with 3D a few years ago and a few years before that as well.
Yeah.
Like, it was a selling point to go to the cinemas, and they really gave you your bang for buck. So speaking of bang for buck, movie didn't make a ton of money.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was budgeted. I think they ended up spending around $2.7 million.
Yep.
I think it was about that. The same year, Gone with the Wind cost $4 million. But we talked about how that made a ton of money.
Yeah.
But they thought, well, obviously the movie came out in 1939, and there was a little thing called World War II that kicked off around then, which would have probably affected its
film,
take. But also a lot of the tickets that were sold were to the cheaper tickets, family, kids tickets. So they didn't get as much of a take there. So yeah, what was it? Why did I get into that? Bang for buck. Yeah,
bang for buck. Yeah.
It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. Great songs. I mean, what else can you say about this movie? I'm looking forward to getting to ones that are a little more contentious, like the themes you can sort of argue about, because this movie's like, it's a classic.
Yeah. I think coming from going back to Lawrence of Arabia, you're getting a lot of natural beauty and scenes shot in the real world, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And then coming to this, which is completely different in a studio. You're almost watching at the theatre, watching a live theatre performance, and which is fine, but it's different.
It is different. It is a real contrast to Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence doesn't just sort of blow up a train and then they all just run down the sand dunes going some sort of song that's about how they're feeling at that time.
I feel like I'm longing for those long movies again.
Okay. Well, part of the reason I found this movie really watchable is the duration. I think I was a bit worn out, or maybe the last few weeks has been a bit busy, and trying to carve out 3.5 to 4 hours. When you stare down the barrel of Citizen Kane's over 2 hours, Godfather is just over 3 or nearly 3, it's around that. Gone with the Wind is, oh my gosh, like 11 hours. That was 4 and a bit hours.
Yeah.
And Lawrence of Arabia is 3.5. Yeah. So Wizard of Oz is at an hour and 42, hour and something. Here's a breath.
That's great.
Here's a breath of fresh air. So, do you have any pieces of trivia about this movie? Do we have we done our synopsis? What is ChatGPT?
I didn't read it out. I'll bring it up. I was wondering.
Okay, we've just assumed everyone know what this movie is.
What was your thoughts on the actors? Did you have anyone you really liked who?
Oh, I always liked the Scarecrow. Yeah. And Judy Garland's great. You kind of feel sorry for her. She's a bit of a tragic figure in life, you know. But she's brilliant. She's obviously very talented, and she, she's great in the role. So another piece of trivia was that they had 4 directors worked on this movie. The guy who's credited is Victor Fleming. I was going to say Victor Hugo, but that's the French writer, isn't it?
Yeah.
He did Hunchback of Notre Dame or something.
Yeah.
So not Victor Hugo. He was long dead. Maybe he was long dead, actually. I don't know when he died.
I'm not...
We're getting off track. What was I talking about again? Anyway, so Victor Fleming's credited. He's also the credited director of Gone with the Wind. So that year was a pretty
good year. That's where I knew the name from.
Yeah, Victor Fleming, yeah. So they had other directors. Huge. They had King Vidor. They had... I've forgotten the other 2 names. But there's 2 guys involved. One guy who was only on it for a couple of weeks actually made a big change. So Judy Garland was originally blonde wig, with lots of makeup, more like the Hollywood bombshell actresses of the time.
Yeah,
and so she
ended up with Reddy Brown.
Yeah, well,
obviously
that's the change. Yeah. That's the change this one director made. I think I don't want to say it's King. It was another guy.
Which that
he made the change.
Like
Dropped the
if she
makeup
was
back.
blonde, it
Yeah.
would have been ruined.
It would have been. Oh, the blonde hair would have destroyed the entire film.
Yeah.
No, but it does work. It sort of like he took her from like this, classic blonde with lots of makeup to a just sort of girl next door, reddish or auburn hair or whatever, and makeup that a teenage girl would be able to do herself.
Yeah.
And it works for the character, and that's a major
Believable,
part of everyone's thing. Yeah.
Now imagine there wouldn't be a huge cast to this film. Like,
Well,
like I
there's tons
was
of
going-
singer. I can't do that.
What were you
Well, the thing is that you're not allowed to say midget, right? And I understand, but they were called the singer midgets in the thing, and it's really off-putting. It really makes you think of it like that, and you go, "Oh no, not allowed to say it." So there's tons of little people that were in the cast.
And some of them were kids though as well.
I don't know.
I believe.
I know that a lot of them were foreign, like they used the movie to stay in America, to escape the Nazis.
Yep.
That a lot of Jews, at least I know around World War II, had escaped Europe to get away from what they thought was probably going to happen, and so those people did as well. And they were called. The group was called. Don't get upset. The group was actually called the Singer Midgets, and it wasn't because they sang. It was because the guy who managed them, his last name was Singer, and he managed them all. And they were all. Like, there's all these stories that are put out there, some from Judy Garland herself, where she'd sort of elaborate on they'd always be drunk or this and that. And it turns out that all that's, is it apocryphal? Is it the word?
Yeah.
It's not real. It was just, they were thrilled to be in a movie. They loved, some of them it was the first time they'd been around other people that looked the same as them, same stature, experiencing the same, like challenges, dealing with a 1939 world that probably didn't respect them as much as they deserved. And they were put on front and center. That was, so it was like it was a good thing for, it sounds like it was a good thing for a lot of them.
Yeah.
Launched a lot of careers. And in fact, one of the guys, I don't know which one, but later on in life, I'm talking a lot here. Is that okay? You got something?
It's fine. I was going to read this.
Okay.
Synopsis,
I'll finish this quick story, but this is just about one of the little people. I'm not going to keep calling them singer midgets because it's. But one of the guys, So the movie is Wizard of Oz, based on the book by L. Frank Baum, who had it was a close relative. I want to say like a brother-in-law and sister-in-law or something, and they had a baby called Dorothy, and the Dorothy was died at a very young age, and they were just traumatized, and so he changed the name of the character in the book. From it was Gage, I think it was, and he changed it to Dorothy Gale. Okay. So, and he named the character Dorothy after their daughter, right? And, and then that daughter had a cemetery, I don't know where, somewhere in America, and it had gone into disrepair. And one of the people who had played the Munchkins had a monument company later on in life, and went, I don't know what year it was, but went looking for it to find the grave of this, the namesake of Dorothy Gale from Wizard of Oz, the actual baby, and he found it, and he, respectfully repaired and remade the headstone and all that sort of stuff, and they named the like little cemetery section like the Dorothy Gage or the Dorothy whatever her real name was. Sent her with children, so it would hopefully give other parents, bereaved parents, comfort knowing that their child was buried around Dorothy from Wizard of Oz. Yeah. I'm not very great at you spitting out a story in a short. We should get ChatGPT to chew that up and spit out of it. But when I read that, I was almost, like a bit emotional. I was like, that's really cool. Yeah. So obviously the experience was positive enough that guy still held it on later on in life and followed up things like that,
Well, I imagine there's not many roles made in Hollywood for them, so to have that opportunity to get a break, and
especially around that time.
Had the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
1970 that was, I think. So
was it? Okay.
So you got, it's 30 years, it's 31 years later though. Yeah, no, well there's exactly not a lot of chance to stretch your wings dramatically, especially if you're, not a taller person. But Yeah, I'm just trying to be respectful. I honestly do have a great deal of respect. Honestly, the ones I like. Okay, you're gonna pick your favorite Munchkins. Did you have a favorite Munchkins? There's a Munchkin of every variety in
The
this
one
movie.
with the twisted up moustache.
The one like I something.
They had some funny voices.
Coronel.
Do you know what effect they put on their
Well, they didn't.
voices with the singing?
It's not their voices.
Yeah.
They just mimed. They couldn't speak. Most of them couldn't speak English, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there was only one. The only voices you hear that are actually theirs are the ones that hand her some flowers when she gets into the chariot.
Is all the singing done by other people?
Other people, yeah.
Even Judy?
No, not Judy Garland.
Okay. Well,
We're talking about the Munchkins.
Yeah, but across the board.
Her whole career is based on her singing.
They were all miming.
Well, I guess I don't know. That would be technical.
They were.
They were.
They were.
Were they?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because you could tell at times they were slightly missing the word.
Oh, okay.
It seems like all the conversations were recorded live, and then all the singing was pre-recorded.
Yeah. So I know because I could go into story after story about this movie. Do you want to read your ChatGPT thing?
It's sort of,
at this point, people got to understand. Let's just do it. Let's do it because we got to make sure we do it. Everyone tunes in just for ChatGPT to give us the synopsis.
All right, and it gives me something to say. The Wizard of Oz is a timeless classic that follows Dorothy, a young girl swept away in the magical land of Oz in a tornado. Desperate to return home to Kansas, she embarks on a journey along the yellow brick road with her companions, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. Together they face the challenges from the Wicked Witch of the West while seeking the wizard, who they believe can fulfill their deepest desires. The film beautifully blends fantasy, allegory, exploring themes of courage, friendship, and power of self-discovery. The iconic ruby slippers, colourful characters, and unforgettable music contribute to its enduring charm. I think that's
beautiful.
Very well put.
I think very well put indeed. Oh, I'm grabbing my microphone. It's really good. I mean, there's nothing to argue about here.
Yeah.
Except maybe the quality of the performance from the Wicked Witch of the West.
I think she was just too nice. Like, I was wanting sort of more of an aggressive character, but it suits the film being sort of kid friendly. So
yeah, I mean, she's pretty scary. I reckon she probably would be thing of nightmares for people, lots of people. Maybe you're just too brave as a 7-year-old. But she wasn't super scary. She's really like if you read up on her, Margaret Hamilton, she seemed like a lovely lady.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They all went through hell though with those costumes.
Ah.
Yeah. So, she had like the green paint on her.
That was a bright green.
There was a bright green paint on her, and there was there's a moment where she disappears in Munchkinland in a thing of fire. Disappears, and they do a take. And the fire comes up before she's fully gone through the trapdoor. And everyone's freaking out, and she doesn't know what they're talking about. Then she looks down, and she's been all burnt all over her hand.
Oh my goodness!
And I think some of her face or something. And so she's got this green powder or stuff, whatever they've got on her skin, and immediately the makeup people rush over with alcohol wipes. Could you imagine you're freshly burnt?
Yeah.
And they just rush over with alcohol wipes because they've got to panic and freak out to get this stuff off your skin before it seeps in because it will poison you and kill you.
Oh, far right.
Right? So that's her experience. And then she was in the hospital for a bit, and she ended up being in there for, I don't know how long, but the production of this movie went for a few months longer than they expected. So it was a few holdups. And her doctor said she should sue, but she knew that would kill her career if she sued someone else. So the TV show Beverly Hillbillies?
Mm.
So there was an actor, Buddy Ebsen, who played, is it Jethro? It's the main hillbilly dude, the dad hillbilly. So he was originally cast as the Scarecrow. And but the guy who played the Scarecrow, I'm going to turn around and look at the poster. What's his name? I want to say Jack something. No, Ray Bolger. Jack Haley plays the Tin Man. Ray Bolger got cast as the Tin Man. Buddy Ebsen got cast as the Scarecrow. Ray Bolger, who actually ends up playing the Scarecrow, always wanted to play the Scarecrow.
Yeah.
From his childhood, from a musical that apparently had been performed on stage, and he wanted to.
Yep.
So he tees up, I don't know how, end up swapping with Buddy Ebsen. Buddy Ebsen's no longer the Scarecrow, Ray Bolger is. That's who we have now. Buddy Ebsen is the Tin Man. They cover Buddy Ebsen's skin in aluminum dust to make him be the Tin Man, and they shoot with him, I think, for a few weeks. And then one day he breathes in and no air gets into his body and he starts freaking out and they have to rush him to hospital because it's coated the inside of his lungs with this aluminum dust and he can't breathe. And he ends up being in hospital for so long they end up recasting, and that's how you got Jack Haley. Is it Jack? Yeah, Jack Haley. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So he ends up being, and they replace the dust with aluminum paste. I'm not American, aluminium. We say aluminium here.
Yes.
Let's cause an international conflict. Aluminum or aluminium? I'm going to say aluminum for the purposes of this. But yeah, and then they obviously use that, but still that stuff was not good. Yeah. But yeah, ended up he lost the role. So he would have been there would have been the other guy. All fates.
Well, that guy Jack did an amazing job
as the Tin Man.
The Tin Man, the Lion, and
there's a
and
few
Scarecrow
spots where you can
great.
still hear Buddy Ebsen's voice. Apparently, I can't tell it, but I think it's in a few of the We're Off to See the Wizards.
Yeah,
because they never recorded those with Jack Haley and they just left them as they were because I guess his voice would be caught in the mix. But all the moments, best moment of the movie. What's your favorite moment of the movie?
Put me on the spot. Can you come back to me?
Okay, we'll circle round. Back to the guy who hasn't said enough. Well, you said circle around. I'm about to talk more. I've got more locked in. No, I'm just kidding.
You go.
No, well, I don't want to say more. It's just the Thomas Barnes podcast. So.
I don't know. I hadn't thought about it.
You don't. So you didn't.
So a scene.
You didn't. Is there a scene that specifically stuck in your dreams as a child? Because this is visually, there's a lot going on. There's so many like things. Like there's the witch's castle.
Yeah.
You know, there's the forest. They do a really good job with all these sets. I really like the set. A lot of the sets have so much depth to them.
Yeah.
They're always showing this really deep set, you know, especially
because they're walking from kind of around the corner, which gives the feeling like they're way in the distance.
Yeah. And there's the famous scene where they said that one of the Munchkins had committed suicide and hung themselves, then the story changed and it became the director's son was upset or something and he'd committed suicide and they had noticed and he was hanging off a tree in the background as they were walking through. Apparently there's a doctored video floating around YouTube about it. And it's not, there's nothing there.
So this...
You've never heard this?
No.
Dude, there are so many layers to this movie. We've got Pink Floyd stories to tell.
Okay.
That's one of the stories is that they have someone, there's the shadow of someone hanging in the background. It's like a 3 Men and a Little Baby story, you know, with the ghost in the house or whatever. Yeah. By the way, I'm alluding to a story where there was a cardboard cutout, I believe, of Ted Danson that was standing in the window that they'd left there by accident from that 3 Men and a Little Lady. A little 3 Men and a Baby movie. So that's the side story. There's all these stories about movies, usually to do with like something had transpired on set and then they left it in the shot by accident and it's really gory. You know?
Okay.
And that's the story with this one. But it's not true.
Okay.
They have like a crane just walking around in the background and it sort of looks like something, I guess.
I did see that. And I thought, that's a bird.
Yeah, well...
but that was way...
That's because you watched it in 4K, probably.
Yeah.
But there's so much... These sets are so beautiful, and even behind... So the one that I like is the one with the trees that she picks an apple. Oh, look.
Yeah,
apples.
they're amazing costumes.
Aren't they really cool? Yeah. And they're in the movie for maybe less than a minute.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort to create that.
What do you think you're doing?
We've been walking a long ways and I was hungry and... Did you say something?
She was hungry.
Could you imagine working on that? You're working on the Death Star in Star Wars and you're sticking all these gadgets onto a ball so that they can fly through space. And that might not necessarily be like on screen specifically for a long period of time, but they shoot a whole scene on the Death Star and it's in heaps of shots and things. And you go, that was worth it. And then you work for months in 1939 in like non-air conditioned spaces and all this, and you create this beautiful tree. He gets one line, throws a few apples, and then that's it. Like
Yeah.
it's off screen. And yeah, I mean, obviously that's not exactly comparable. I went off the rails a little bit there, but
Yeah.
but I feel like some of these things are in the movie for such a short amount of time, and yet they would have spent ages when they're crossing the poppy field. Look how many poppies there
I
are.
was just going to say that was probably my favorite shot, the view of the Emerald City
Yeah.
as they're approaching. It had a shimmer to it, and I was trying to figure out what, because I think that was a backdrop.
Well, it would have been a painting,
Yeah.
I guess. But I'm assuming maybe they would have put holes in it and then shine lights through shiny. There's a few movies that did this. We had that shot with Citizen Kane that did something as well with a crowd. Remember, where he's on the podium, he's running for government, and they've got all the crowd, and then they just had like lights shining through to make it look like the crowd.
It didn't look like that though. From I wondered if in post production they put something over the top to give it that look. They're from a time where I'm assuming there was quite an literal art to creating sets for theatre. So I
think so.
I think a lot of people would have had those skills.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was. It's not that people don't have that skill now. It's just that there's no
done thing.
They don't need to do it. They just shoot everything in a volume or on green screen or blue screen or whatever they say. So
Yeah.
and even then, shoot on location and they just throw things in the background. Background extensions happens all the time in movies.
Yeah.
What is it? Gangs of New York. He did a lot of set extensions and things as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's just such a good movie. I really like it.
fun,
It's fun. It's just fun. It's not trying to do anything. It exactly hits the bullseye and what it is. I feel as though there's nothing more to say about it.
Yeah,
Really.
it's one of those movies you want your kids to watch it. Like I remember that was one of the first movies I showed my kids.
Yeah. So how did you watch it this time?
With the kids again. Yeah,
same.
They loved it. Yeah.
It's a real family pleaser. So, like I said earlier, that I was going to say about how it came to be that so many kids watched it, and part of that reason is that they, CBS wanted to buy the rights to, I want to say it was Gone with the Wind, but it was something, and they packaged in the rights to broadcast Wizard of Oz annually as a deal with it. So at a lower fee or something every year you can broadcast it. And so in America they broadcast it every year, once a year on television. And it sort of like had this resurgence, which meant that it got more releases. It went back to the cinemas a couple times.
Yeah. It is one of those films, like, you know how you go back to Christmas films every year and you don't get sick of it. It's one of those films. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is another one. You can just go back to regularly. And
what do you think that makes a movie like that?
There's got to be some charm to it, because a more modern movie for me was Aladdin. Like I remember
Cartoon one?
Yeah, the cartoon one. There's something magical about it. I think you're taken into a world, so it's quite foreign to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that there's something about childhood that we, even as adults, we are unsatisfied with what happens at the end when it ends. However that ends for you, whether it happens to be something that isn't exactly positive, that breaks you out of your childhood state, or whether it's just growing up.
Yep.
That we yearn for a time that we can feel like a child again, whether we're conscious of it or not. And that's why this is a big theory, right? That's why I think that, at least in the West or wherever we can, we get onto boats, or we get on jet skis, or a lot of biking and things.
Yeah.
It's not just about health and getting out. It's about feeling the freedom and that you having fun. A lot of the hobbies and things people take up, it's not saying these things are bad. It's just that they're exactly enjoyable because you don't necessarily want to go back to being a child and lose all of the things you have and go back to someone else controlling you and living in a dictatorship in your house or whatever. Yeah. But I think these movies remind us of something that we lose, especially in stories now. Honestly, like the next movie is The Graduate, right? Which couldn't be less have less in common with the Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
You know,
I know nothing about it.
We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of like about the end of childhood. Not the end of childhood so much, the end of adolescence, or this world crashing around. It's a bit like that. We'll find out. But and then we got On the Waterfront, heavy movies that people are wrestling with what it means to be an adult in a broken world.
Yeah.
This one doesn't. It's like, be a kid.
Yeah.
See that lady over there? She's evil and sad.
Well, Citizen Kane, he was Rosebud. He's looking back to his
Well
childhood.
done. What a callback. See, the whole movie is based around that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's experiencing things for the first time, the wonder and the magic. And, I know some kids have a rough upbringing, but for a lot of us, it's quite a magical time.
Yeah. And I think, and I don't know anything about a rough upbringing, but I can only imagine that doesn't mean that you don't have fun with things. That some things aren't your escape. And I do think that, quite honestly, I think that's why some of what Hollywood's putting out right now is really missing the mark in that regard, because they just forget their job. It's like, your job isn't to pull us into reality. It's to give us a story. And we do the reality stuff the rest of the time. We watch your movie for 2 hours, or your TV show, whatever, and we're in reality the rest of the time. So if you've got a good story that talks about bravery, or that talks about forgiveness, or that has something at its core, that plays subtext, or just have fun with us. Pirates of the Caribbean, Wizard of Oz, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Some of these movies just need to be just what they are.
But I think...
And we'll do the rest.
It's very hard, like with animation, I think it's been done so much that it's hard to create that movie with some charm, like your Toy Story and Finding Nemo. But then real life kids movies, I don't know. They don't quite hit the mark, I think.
Sometimes. What about I guess maybe in the 90s they stopped making them. There's the Sandlot, or the Sandlot Kids, as we had it in Australia.
I think
I like that.
We've talked a lot about CGI, but I think if you can remove that and have a lot of real life...
Yeah, I think I'm becoming more and more... I hate CGI.
Yeah.
And not that it can't do good things and you can't have fun with it, and there's, great stuff, that they could... But I honestly think if you see a whole wonderful world in front of your eyes, the advantage they had in 1939 is that they probably didn't think, oh, that's a matte painting.
Yeah.
They probably just would have watched the movie because they would have had this life outside that was not as easy as our Western lives are. And they would have gone to the cinemas to see a story. And whereas we watch like something with a lot of CGI, all these, and half your brain is going, well, I know that's not real.
Yeah, yeah.
The other half is trying to suspend disbelief. But
I was chatting to someone about the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I think that is the difference. Like in the Lord of the Rings, they made most of those costumes, from what I understand, of the orcs, whereas in The Hobbit, a lot of it was CGI, and there's something off.
It doesn't work. I've seen I'm on a fan page. On a Facebook fan page. I think I liked it one time, and they always post really good stuff about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And like the fan pages for Lord of the Rings. And one of the things is they always contrast the physical characters from those movies that were like the Uruk-hai and all the different the orcs that were real and had real acting, and then all the new ones were all CG, and even the Goblin King was CG. Yeah. And they all just sort of fall flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can be amazing and they can do amazing things, but I think it's really in the minds of some filmmakers that's better, that they can have more control. And really, it doesn't work long term. This works long term. Yeah. There's people in the character and the costume that their faces barely articulate, and they're monkeys.
Yeah,
they still work.
Amazing. Yeah,
it still works. What 84 years later?
It takes me back. I loved the BBC Narnia series when I was younger.
Oh, yeah?
And they've got these beavers hobbling around in these weird probably cardboard costumes.
I need to see this.
And, the newer movies don't compare. I don't think I wanted as a kid it to be more real or anything like that. I was just happy with getting lost in the world and a story. And
things are less amazing in real life, even when they are amazing. Does that make sense? Like, awe-inspiring stuff. You don't usually see amazing things. Like, another great example, I think, is Yoda in Attack of the Clones all of a sudden becoming a, kung fu master, flipping and flopping all over the place.
Yeah.
That's way too intense for real life. Like, if Yoda was real, and I know that it's a fantasy world, he wouldn't do those things. He would. And the proof is in Empire Strikes Back, Attack of the Clones, and all that sort of stuff. It's fun, but it's cartoonish and stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to say it. It's stupid. It's nowhere near as good. And dialogue's no different. Like, you can pick on the dialogue, but the dialogue in the old Star Wars movies is not as... doesn't feel as stupid because the world feels more grounded. Because Yoda is... I know he's a puppet, but he's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is my moment to tell everybody to watch. I'll post the link in the description below for the Yoda music video that someone made years ago, which is fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. So
have to share that.
Yeah, but these movies where we've got, I think this is this is a really good movie to point out things like that, because this is all just matte paintings and beautiful costumes, of which were horrifically painful for people to wear. The lion guy's in real lion skin.
Yeah.
And his entire costume couldn't breathe at all. So at the end of every day, they'd pour all the sweat out of him.
Oh my goodness.
Disgusting. Yeah. They would eat. They got them to eat in their own dressing rooms because they were so apparently obnoxious, or not personally, but the smell or the look of them was also.
Yeah. I got a question about the lion. How is his tail working? Okay, it was
that is a brilliant
all
question.
over the place.
I literally had the same thought, exactly the same thought as you.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
It's like they entered the Emerald Castle, I think, where the wizard was, and it was dragging along the ground. And then there's a shot at the back where it picks up and starts moving from side to side. And I couldn't.
Did they have remote control?
Maybe. I don't know.
Even in 2023, we can't immediately go, oh, they did that with this.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at one point when he's just done his if I were the king of the forest.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show off my little... At the end of that, and then the guy comes out and says, oh, I'll try and get the wizard for you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He's standing there and the tail is flipping, flapping behind him. And then he grabs the tail and holds it like this. And I was thinking... at that point, I'm like, oh, well, it can't be a wire, because I'd see the wire. It'd have to be.
Though when Tin Man was doing his dance and he was leaning from side to side, I'm assuming there were wires.
Yeah, although I think there were
him up,
marks in the ground. Isn't that how Michael Jackson did that same move? There were marks in the ground. He had to stand in there with those slots in the bottom of his foot, and it locked him into the ground. There probably were wires,
maybe,
but look, if all of that stuff, we look at it today and go, wow, this movie screams technical proficiency. Yeah. They were all really good. From the it's a twister. You know how they handled that in the background with the rear projected stuff. And it looks like an old movie because we're all used to it. But it really it works. It's just like a sock with some dust and stuff blowing through it, and then they rear projected that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how they do it. One last piece of trivia I will leave you with. You want to hear a piece of trivia that's really interesting?
Please tell me more.
Look, there's so much trivia about this movie. Firstly, in the book, the slippers are not ruby slippers.
What?
Yeah, no, they're not. They're Air Jordans. No, they're silver in the book. I'm pretty sure they're silver, and they changed them to ruby because to show off the Technicolor stuff. But so in the whole costuming department, they wanted Professor Marvel, so the guy who plays a bunch of people in Emerald City, and he plays the Wizard of Oz himself, the titular character. But he's also Professor Marvel in Kansas, and she goes to see for Professor Marvel when she's run away to keep Toto from being taken from Miss Gulch. I know a lot of the characters' names here. They're locked in my brain. And so Professor Marvel has to wear some sort of old coat that maybe he had a fancier life early on and he sort of fell into disrepair a bit, and that's what they wanted him to have. So the costumer went to these places, thrift stores they call them, whatever, and bought a bunch of coats. And one of the ones they ended up picking for him, the actor placed his the screens have gone to sleep, so you won't be able to see the movie branding anymore. Put his hand into the pocket and pulled out a little thing, and it said made for L. Frank Baum. So the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz, they by accident had bought one of his jackets secondhand, and it became a costume in the movie. So anyway, maybe I find that more fascinating than Nick. And it was verified. The wizard, widow of L. Frank Baum.
Yeah.
Baum?
Just
Baum.
go with it. Just
Go
choose
with
one.
it. She verified it was his. So it's definitely not.
Yeah,
It's not like
that's a great story.
It's a great story.
Oh, okay.
This whole movie is filled with great
Yeah.
things. I think the whole thing's fantastic. I highly recommend it. What are we doing? Ruby slippers or golden bricks?
Ruby
or-
slippers.
Okay, this is a. After all that, it's a 5 out of 5 ruby slippers for me.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5, with a couple extra
Yeah.
ruby, added on top. It's definitely a perfect movie.
I was going to say 4.5, but I don't know if you can.
You can go 4.5. You don't have to be bullied into.
I just feel like I can't. I've got to have some ranking. So someone's got to be up at the top, and then we'll.
Well,
filter
there's
them
so many
through
movies
here.
made, and then this is the top 100. So if we give every last one of them 5 stars, then I feel like we're okay.
I want to be controversial.
I'm going to slowly
I agree.
drop the amount of stars by like increments of like 0.1.
Yeah.
So this is 5, 4.9, 4.8, 4. Yeah, so this would be like a 4.6. I can't do that. It's 5.
I compare it to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I feel they're similar films, and I slightly prefer that, so that's why I give it 4.5.
Fair enough. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do.
Thank you.
I'm allowed
you
to.
sure?
Yeah. No.
That's not what you say before we start.
Do as you are told. And shush, stop talking so much, Nick. I also say that, but you never listen. You always ask questions. You insist on reading your thing.
I'm sorry, everybody.
You're a pair of ears, Nick. Okay, what else have we... Do we have anything else we want to add to this wonderful podcast episode that we've been...
No, I think that covers it. So next week is The Graduate.
Yes, it is The Graduate, film 1967. I couldn't find it on the list.
Who's that starring?
That is Dustin Hoffman as a young man. And, okay, so Mel Brooks, his wife, plays the main character as well, Mrs. Robinson. You're trying to seduce me, Mrs. Robinson. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. Oh, it's going to come to me after we finish. Yeah, anyway. Annette Bening. No, not Annette Bening. Anne Bancroft. Anne Bancroft. It was an Anne someone. Annette Bening's still around. Anne Bancroft's not.
Yeah.
So, yes, 1967, good movie. Got music from Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, okay. I'm surprised it's so high, and I've never heard of it.
You've never heard of it? Oh, it's referenced a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's at in Wayne's World 2. There's a scene where he has to go to the church to try and stop her from marrying someone else. And it's all directly from The Graduate.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, we'll have fun. I've only seen that
Sounds good.
movie once.
Yeah.
And I don't have it on DVD, and I'm definitely not watching it with my kids. Don't watch it with your kids.
All right.
Well, I don't think don't watch it with the kids. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching the Video Lineup podcast. I think we're
Thanks
probably
for
going to wrap
joining
it up.
us. Yeah.
Feeling good?
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.